Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Okay, and welcome back to the show, everybody. So, once again, we have with us just another excellent recurring guest. We've got Max Wood from Galaxy of Film.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? How have you been, man?
I am delightful. How about you?
Doing quite well. Staying busy. Got a lot of content dropping, a lot of movies to keep up with, coming out here. But I'm just trying to stay afloat, really.
That's essentially it. Just stay afloat, never ending in terms of content.
Something
So,
like that, yeah.
we decided to talk about, once again, another rapper slash singer who got into acting, and that is Mr. Ice-T. That's right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Ice. Tracy Marrow, Ice.
hmm
So, when did you first hear about him?
Oh, man. I got... My dad really introduced me into hip-hop, like the Beastie Boys, back when I was like 7 or 8. And then that kind of opened up my rabbit hole through discovering like Ice-T's music down the line, just hip-hop in general. But as far as acting it goes, my first like interaction with them would probably be San Andreas, actually, for his voice acting role in that.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Grand Theft Auto. So
Yeah, not the movie with The Rock. I think that was my first encounter with Ice-T, though, was San Andreas.
1,000%. He was always on my radar. His movies, whether they were made for TV, direct to video, or just in theaters, they were just constantly on all the cable TV stations. So I just saw him a bunch. A bunch of them definitely premiered on HBO and USA Network. So that was just kind of the deal. He could be tough one minute or funny the next. And he was just kind of one of those. He wasn't necessarily known for being like a deep actor so much as just very charismatic. So he kind of just was like DMX, where you're just like, I respect you, dude. Regardless of how much of that is your real life persona versus, movie persona, it just, the camera loves it. It eats it up. And I mean, come on, you won a Best Breakthrough Performance nom for MTV for New Jack City. And so that's just it too. I saw him working constantly with Mario Van Peebles and a bunch of those other guys. He was off to a great start movie wise with the Breakin' movies, and then doing a bunch of other music documentaries and such. And, the Demis Leary's comedy, Who's the Man, which was kind of fun. And I especially associated him the most with, for better or worse, Ricochet, where he played Denzel's ex-con friend in what is otherwise, again, just was Denzel's Washington's first foray into action movies. Johnny Mnemonic. Get the uncut Japanese version. Don't watch the theatrical version. Tank Girl and Surviving the Game, which was basically a rival to Van Damme's Hard Target. Just that whole, just person having to survive while being, hunted by various people. And Mean Guns was another one that was often recommended on Amazon for fans of action movies. And then Judgment Day, that was an HBO world premiere back in the day, just was kind of a fun take on the Armageddon formula, but if you threw in some cops and robbers stuff in there. Another one that many have heard of, but not necessarily everyone seems to have seen, that was also kind of earlier on, was the Walter Hill. It was kind of like a neo-Western. It was just a crime movie about these firefighters played by William Sadler and Bill Paxton, who decide to rob a bunch of stolen loot that's owned by all these gangsters. And that was both Ice Cube and Ice-T's, like one of their first movies together. And Walter Hill directed it. And it was just a cool movie. It just got the Shout Factory Blu-ray treatment a few years back, but I was
What was that called?
Trespass. And
okay, I've never heard of that.
Robert Zemeckis had written the original draft, and it was pretty much, it was like on the Hollywood blacklist as one of those like Die Hard type actioners, and so of course everyone was like, we got to make it. And like you know, obviously once he got into Law and Order and he was doing it back to back with all other kinds of movies, he was pretty much set for life. He's just a cool dude. He's just,
yeah, really,
you instantly knew is like he didn't take it all that seriously, and yet you never heard about him being mean to anyone or just being stuck up, refusing to come out of a trailer. He's just a cool cat. And he got it apparently because he was a recurring role on New York Undercover. He's really villainous on that. And I would see him also I couldn't not see him at least once a year. He was appearing on everything from Space Ghost to a sketch for like Conan O'Brien or something. I just would always see him, and I was just always just guffawing because of like, you know, he's just very slick. He's very organized, and he doesn't have this whole predicament of just feeling like he just doesn't belong in any kind of movie, you know, because there's other rappers who I don't have anything wrong with them, but they kind of just seem to just be so limited to where it's kind of annoying. And he's just kind of, he wants to get in and get out and do his part. And so I always kind of just associated him with all the Samuel L. Jackson, Danny Trejos of the world, just the whole deal of just be the best part about any movie.
Yeah, I can see that. The Samuel Jackson is a good comparison to Ice-T, actually. Odd enough.
Oh, well, hell, there's a connection. Remember, he's the narrator at the beginning of The Other Guys. The Rock and Sam Jackson are in, and I just is like, you instantly recognize his voice. And I think that's just it, too. When I see him playing himself on the cartoon shows or even just all the other stuff, I mean, he just kind of had an interesting background, too, just being part of that whole nightclub aspect, you know, basically fell in love with a call girl of the night and just making all these video game appearances and doing the whole, like you say, just and nowadays it's a no-brainer to combine, you know, nu metal with you know, hardcore hip-hop. But you know, when he was first starting it with his band Body Count, I don't know if you ever heard any of their music.
Yeah, I've listened to Body Count before.
Yeah, and I mean, they especially appear in a lot of the movies you'll discuss, but I mean, it was just interesting for me because I was just like, yeah, I really dig mixing in metal with, you know, old school 90s rap. It's just something about it that just gets my blood churning and just really I want to actually go and work out. It's just badass. And I listened to Murder for Hire, his 2006 album, especially a lot in college.
Did you? Okay. My favorite album of his, we'll get to that a little bit more too. Seventh Deadly Sin was my favorite album.
Oh, nice. So you're talking about the end of the century. Nice. 99. And that was a big ass album. Like that was produced by Roadrunner Records and like 2 other brands. It was, and I think, on the movies you'll mention, I think he plays at least 3 different remixes from that in some of his movies. And so I think that was what was interesting. I'd see him appear in all these other movies, and whether it's a heist movie like 3,000 Miles to Graceland or something with Eric Roberts, but I was also used to seeing him be in some of these junky movies that you'll mention, you know, like for Fred Olen Ray, who's a schlocky filmmaker, or, you know, gangster films with Snoop Dogg. And it was just interesting because even when the movies were were kind of schlocky. They just kind of had a fun party kind of tone about them. We're just like, okay, it's not a great movie, but it's kind of a fun B picture.
100%, man. That's why I love the ones we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. 100%.
Totally. So yeah, he as an intro to Max's point. So out of all the other filmmakers Ice worked with, he worked with Abel Ferreira, who you guys might know from just China Girl and Bad Lieutenant. He worked with Jim Wynorski, another guy, but then he did a bunch of other documentaries. One that was really good was, oh man, he appeared on the Beef series, but there was another cool one. I cannot remember the name of it, and it's not showing on here, but it was around 06-ish. He did a really cool rap documentary, and he's talking about is like many people, if they just don't like rap music, they just can't help it. They're listening to how it sounds as opposed to what's being said. And so I loved that, how he summed it up, because it was very much like how you see stand-up comedians just realizing you can't let any criticism get in your way. You got to just push through and hope that the right people get your material, you know? It was like, that's cool, because there's just so many other rappers who around that time were just taking their smack talking a little too far, or just saying, you know what, fuck you don't get what I'm talking about. It's like, no, just don't make it personal, just get in, get out. And so yeah, he worked with, I mean, come on, he was in one of the Leprechaun movies, which is kind of probably one of the better ones of that.
I've actually never seen the Leprechaun movies. I've been putting them off for so long.
They're trashy. They're like a lesser version of like Wishmaster or Chucky, but there was just something about them where it's just like, just the outrageous gags it was kind of like Puppet Master, where it just dominated video stores and TV just because it was just that absurd just kind of mentality to it. And you just can't help, but you can't look away.
I've seen clips, but it's never sat down to watch a whole one. I feel
it's stupid, but it is what it is. So yeah, this filmmaker who Max is going to detail, he worked with the Filipino filmmaker Albert Pion, who had done all sorts of wacky stuff like Cyborg with Van Damme, and he was known for just doing all kinds of just wacky movies that were just like under budget and sometimes extremely limited, and he would often have post-apocalyptic kind of concepts with them. And Max was even fortunate enough to get one of the actors from this movie to even like sign a DVD of it.
yeah. Albert Pino also did this other movie that we talked about on Galaxy of Film a while back called Alien from LA, which was like weird because Albert Pune had like some involvement on set or the creative process of one of the Journey to the Center of the Earth films. In Alien from LA is more or less a parody of Journey of the Center to the Earth, but it's not funny.
No,
it's just
it's
like
very painful, even for Mystery Science Theater, where you're just
it's just a weird take on it. Like I don't know what led him to want to make that movie. He's done some weird stuff for sure, some terribly weird stuff.
Totally, it was just one of those where you're like,
Yeah, but the thing that I want to just I gush over, man, as far as Ice-T stuff goes, I don't know what this studio was thinking, but he got the rights to do 3 movies of Ice-T, and it really makes me wonder if that the studio was like, okay, you can do one really long movie or just 3 like hour and 10-minute movies, because we got 3 of them, and it's weird. And so this company called Filmworks gave them the rights to do it, so I call it the Filmworks Trilogy. From my understanding, they have been bought out several times since then, have changed their names, and is now kind of lost within Lionsgate, from my understanding, as far as the rights go with these 3 films, which is the one I consider the start of it, at least, is called Corrupt, which I think is the main one everyone talks about. Then the sequel, I like to call it, is Wrecking Crew, and then the third, Urban Menace, which has Snoop Dogg as well in it.
That was a wild one, because like you say, it's just like you're seeing Corrupt, from the Dog Pound, who collaborated with Nate and Snoop Dogg, and it was just so wild seeing how he was another one. He kind of just gave up acting after a while and just stuck to, live rap. And you kind of wonder, because not necessarily a great actor, but he's very invested in what he's talking about. And it was one of those where I'm just like, yeah, so here he is in this whole deal. What's going on here?
Yeah, man. I mean, you've seen all three of these, right? Of this film or trilogy?
Yeah, I couldn't not. And just the history about it was just outrageous. Seeing how someone screwed them over, forgot the film reels, they got overexposed. And I kind of don't really consider them movies. And I'm not saying that to be a dick. It's kind of more just like they're kind of music videos that have some very loose plot.
In a way, yeah. But I'm glad you have watched them all, because the third one, Urban Menace, is the one I haven't had a chance to see. But you did mention that I did go ahead and I was able to meet one of the actors from this
TJ
trilogy.
Storm, who's done so many martial arts. He was on the Conan the Barbarian show back in the 90s.
He's Godzilla now for the mocap stuff as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he's in the more recent stuff for the MonsterVerse series going on.
Well, I'm glad, because he seemed like a decent actor, and yet he seemed to. It was like many stunt performers and martial artists, where they seem to have a lot of direct-to-video stuff, but then when they tried to do a big role, their roles would either get cut for time or their dialogue got cut. And like, he's in the 2009 Star Trek, but his scene got deleted, and it's only on the special features, and you're like,
if you're a Star Wars fan, he's in The Force Unleashed, actually, and Fallen Order. He does the mocap for Vader, which is kind of cool.
Okay, nice. I think I did see some video game credits on there, so
yeah, cool stuff. But I did have the chance to meet him a couple years ago at a local convention, and he's in all three of these. And so I walked up to him. I had my DVD copy of Corrupt, and I came up to him. I was like, "Hey, I know a lot of people know you as Godzilla, or even from Deadpool, because he was Colossus in that." He didn't.
Oh, really?
That.
Okay, yeah. Sweet.
It's like, hey, I know you're known as much better things, but I know you from this. So you signed this for me, and he screamed so fucking loud. Like, I thought he was going to drop his phone that he was holding.
That's great.
He said, and all of his entire career, he's never been approached for these movies whatsoever. He doesn't credit them that he's been in these at all. Like, he doesn't talk about them whatsoever. We talked for like half an hour at least. Discussing
nice.
Your behind the scenes process of the storytelling. And like you said, man, there was some screwing over on set of some sorts. TJ did not know the details, and he said it doesn't really matter at this point. It was such a train wreck of a set anyways, because in the process of filming this, whatever team was set out by FilmWorks, I guess, to scout locations across in the Czech Republic this was filmed in, I believe, they didn't get permits for the warehouse scenes or anything you see like this. And it was a very low budget because they were doing these at once. So everyone had to sleep in these warehouses that you see in the movies. And I'm pretty sure it's the same warehouse. A recurring thing you'll see of these is they all reuse the same B-roll footage. And I think there's even lines where like Ice-T is referred to as a character from one movie in different movies because they reuse so much footage. I know like a lot of like the B-roll footage, especially from Corrupt, where it's TJ Storm specifically, all of his stuff you can see in Wrecking Crew. I think it's even partially like the trailer for Urban Menace that I've seen. But they didn't get permits or anything like that. They were sleeping in these abandoned warehouses.
That is so wild.
In freezing temperatures. And it was a nightmare. He was like, people weren't eating. We were cold. We were getting frostbite. It was a fucking nightmare to work on set with this. And they couldn't really afford to have everybody there at once. So when Snoop Dogg came on set, Snoop Dogg had one day on set for both films, for Wrecking Crew and Urban Menace. And so the first scene he ever filmed on the set that Snoop filmed was with a scene with TJ. And I think it was for Urban Menace, if I'm not mistaken. It's a scene where like TJ is chasing Snoop and he has to shoot Snoop and like he's screaming on camera. TJ is. And TJ was telling me all about how, Snoop he didn't know how to act.
No.
So when he was given instructions to take off running, Snoop didn't stop. He took off running out of the warehouse down the street. And TJ Storm was just like woken up out of like a nap because he was trying to like huddle in a corner to stay warm. He was just woken up by some of the crew members. Somebody was told to go chasing Snoop Dogg and act like you're screaming at him. He does this, and in the middle of the scene, while Snoop Dogg is taking off, you can hear it, and you can visually see his face just shift completely, and he starts being like drenched in sweat for the rest of the film. TJ Storm messes up his hamstring in that scene where he's chasing Snoop.
Jesus.
And he was describing that his entire thought process for the rest of set was, I can either keep this to myself and just do everything with one take, or I can sit here for another 6 months in an abandoned warehouse.
Jeez.
Absolutely wild behind the scenes stuff, man. I'm curious, how did you hear about these 3 films?
I was okay, so just like everyone was listening to just all kinds of music on LimeWire, I was watching all kinds of movies on Rapid Share, used DVD stores during college, and so it was inevitable. I was the kind of guy who would always just check out whatever just was in the action and horror movie section, sci-fi, indie, didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I had seen cheesy stuff like Elvira and Joe Bob and, Mystery Science Theater. So I would watch just about any kind of movie, whether it was just some kind of standalone horror movie by an X-Files writer or just just something cool with some kind of kung fu kickboxer guy. And so, yeah, I mean, Pion was kind of well known to me, and I was familiar with these to some extent, and how some rappers got their start trying to be actors and being in all these gangland movies, and they're just nutty because you're just like, it's just a lesson in how basically there were a lot of movies that were basically the equivalent of student films, and these got, into the whole, they were kind of predecessor to The Room, if you will, is like, this is so wacky, it's silly movie.
Yeah, The Room is a good comparison. I know a lot of people have like their movie where it's so terrible they absolutely love it. That is Corrupt for me specifically, man. I was 18 when I discovered this movie. My friend went to like a local used books and movie store or whatever, and I had a Freeman outside, and there was a VHS copy of Corrupt sitting in there that he picked up.
Nice.
He played it for us the first like 15 minutes whenever Ice-T sets what is that character's name though? The Jamaican man with the ponytail on the side of his head.
Oh shit. That's
For anyone, Raishu something, whatever his name is, dude.
It's
Anyway,
an
Ice-T
outrageous
sets him on
name.
fire. I remember my friend's name vividly, or he specifically sat us down before I went home, and he made me watch this scene on his couch, and I couldn't leave. I ended up going home late that day. I had to finish watching the movie at that point, dude. Absolutely fell in love with that. This is my friend group's, this is our room. This is our something so terrible we love that we reference on a day-to-day basis. The Seventh Deadly Sin soundtrack. Well, I say soundtrack. It's an album. It's the full studio album, but it's somehow, I mean, you hear the main song, Always Want to Be a Hoe, like 5 times in Corrupt. It's the opening credits song. It plays to the movie. It's the end credits song.
They had no other songs to play, yeah.
I mean, this album is the soundtrack for these 3 movies. It's ridiculous. I think Ice-T is credited 7 times in the opening credits, excuse me.
Yeah. To your point, it definitely seemed like these were kind of just cult movies, and that was just kind of part of the thing. If you're going to do a martial arts movie, make sure to always have a few kung fu guys who had done a bunch of stupid action movies, B-pictures, and get all the Gary Daniels or Tim Thomersons of the world, get someone from Full Moon or something else wacky, and then Silk the Shocker. He's a big thing right now. He might want to rap. Might want to actually act. And so, yeah, just put him in your damn movie. And I just remember his acting here being criticized, but a lot of people own the movie because the commentary is just so funny, how Ice-T is just talking to the director the whole time, especially in the first one. I haven't even seen that one all the way. I need to, because it's apparently a more coherent yet still fucked up kind of movie compared to the other 2, which were just, like you say, just using footage from one another, just had someone who had no concept of, okay, you're stating the obvious too much.
Dude, the commentary is great. I remember one line specifically that cracks me up was Ice-T. It's pretty early on. He says you either have to be a crackhead or actually retarded to enjoy that film.
Ice, my man, get in it.
Yeah. It's a good watch, dude. I sat down and I watched it with my friends one night, just the regular version, and then immediately put on the commentary, and we didn't get tired of it after watching it back to back twice. The commentary adds so much more to it.
Just something about it. This is that kind of midnight kind of movie. You're like, I should be asleep, but here I am.
Yeah, something like that.
Here we are. It is wild though, because this is like you're just looking at it and you're like, I think something fun could come of it. And then he does these other movies with Albert Pion, Crazy Six, which is just a weird Slovakian film, like gangster movie that has Rob Lowe, Burt Reynolds, and a bunch of these other guys. And it was just another one of those just WTF kind of movies where you're like, I don't hate it, but I can understand why so many people just got sick of it, just calling it just very dreary and weird. And it's just so wild how he kind of made that part of his thing.
Yeah, I feel you.
And how, you get to the Wrecking Crew and Urban Menace, and you're just like, these are just so bizarre movies.
They are. Isn't like Snoop Dogg a vampire or something in Urban Menace? That's someone I haven't seen.
Yeah, the trailer makes better sense. It's like they had to redo the sound. It's like, jeez.
Yeah, man, they were a mess. The other thing, TJ, was the other standout story he told me was when he landed the role, because he was pretty new to acting as well. He was nervous because he like doesn't cuss. He doesn't curse normally. Like he wasn't growing up that way. He wasn't raised that way, and so he had to sit down with his mom on the phone in front of his friends and go over his lines, because his thought process was, okay, if I can say this in front of my mom, I could say it in front of anybody. So he's reading the ever so wonderful script in front of this group of people, and it is, fuck man, you must be mad. He was telling me the whole thing about it, man. It was awesome hearing some wonderful stories about this. I don't want to call it a nightmare, man, because like I like what we got as a result of it, but I don't know what the hell went wrong on that set. I don't.
It's a predicament, and it's just like they just it could have worked, especially in a world of iPhones. Nothing is beyond limits, but yet there's just something, like you say, it became just a so bad it's good kind of movie where you're just like, I don't know what we just watched, and I want to kind of still know more about this dorky movie, because just...
Like I'm glad it didn't turn out any better, because I wouldn't. This could have just easily been some generic throwaway movie that like I would have never given a single thought of again. So like I'm glad this movie kind of worked out in a sense. I'm glad this movie barely survived. I'll put it that way.
It's that kind of B picture, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wild. And all his other films he was doing around this time, I recommend, especially Final Voyage, which is kind of a fun, Die Hard on a boat kind of movie, and then Ablaze, which just is basically a 70s inspired kind of disaster movie, and they use a bunch of stock footage from other firefighter movies. And then he stops doing as many of those junky pictures and just goes back to doing just a lot of other kind of just fun comedies and everything, and rap documentaries in between, seasons of SVU. But I do think Tank Girl has gotten a lot of fun applause. He's one of the roasters on the Roast of Hugh Hefner. You can find that on YouTube. That's a hysterical Comedy Central special. He also roasted Flavor Flav a few years later, but
I've seen clips of that. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. All the Chicago PD crossovers of SVU were fun. Just seeing him actually interact with the other detectives and say, "Hey, you ain't from around here, New York." I think Johnny Mnemonic has become more appreciated if you see the uncut, Japanese edit versus it's not in Japanese. It's just it was through a German Blu-ray company and the version seen in Japan because it's just a more complete kind of Blade Runner type movie. And the version we got in the States, you know, you want to talk movies that could have been too big to fail but ended up just flunking. Is just that's the other thing. Is just Johnny Mnemonic. I think without it, Keanu Reeves wouldn't have gone on to do stuff like The Matrix, you know, cyberpunkish kind of things. But yet, it at the time was kind of blasted as being a Total Recall type, you know, poor man's version. And it really isn't a half bad movie. I always figured there's a good movie in there somewhere. And I was just so glad to see the uncut version on Blu-ray a few years back. I'm like, you know, see, there is a good movie in there somewhere. It's just a shame that we got a hackneyed up version by Sony in the States. And there's so many people I know who they refuse to rewatch it because they just have that bad version of it stuck in their head. I'm like, I guarantee you will rank this up there with all these other cyber sci-fi thriller type films if you watch the uncut version. And I definitely thought he was a great part of the cast. Him and Dina Meyer from Dragonheart and Starship Troopers. It's just an interesting premise, just seeing all these post-apocalyptic movies and how this became a theme with some of his other gangster rap movies and action and horror films. And I think, again, to your point, he even did a few other dorky movies for Olin Ray and Jim Wynorski where basically he just will play a U.S. Marshal and just show up and either appear halfway through the movie or die midway through, depending on the one. One of them was called, like, I think, Air Rage, and then there was just like a similar one. I don't blame anyone for getting them not being able to tell any of them apart. Stealth Fighter's an interesting one because basically it just uses stock footage from all those Navy SEALs type movies, and it's basically a Broken Arrow knockoff.
Okay.
And it's just so funny how he got to be part of that Jim Wynorski train because him and Ray and Pion are the same kind of deal where it's just these guys who have no business making movies make a lot of movies. They could make a halfway decent movie, but they kind of just have to stop taking themselves all that seriously when half their footage is recycled explosions from other movies. They're like discount Michael Bay, you know?
Yeah, you're not wrong. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's so wacky. And I mean, much like Pion and Ice's commentary, Wynorski has become notorious for just having just hysterical commentaries. He basically does his own Mystery Science Theater commentary on each of his movies. And during the Final Voyage one, it is just so funny how him and the co-star Claudia Christian, who many will know from the sci-fi show Babylon 5, she's just making fun of how she looks playing the main villainess, and it's like they just make their best jokes about Ice-T the whole time. You're like, yep, and this is where he pretends to shoot someone in the face, and of course he told this guy to, you know, go fuck himself, and just Ice is in the house, here to play ball, here to play the villain. Recently I did see him in a fun gangster movie called Once Upon a Time in Brooklyn. It's not notable. It had a big all-star cast, including Kathy Moriarty from Raging Bull and Armin Ashanti, but I didn't mind it. It was just could have been something a little more, kind of a little too ego-driven, but I was glad to see him pop up and just kind of add his 2 cents. Ice was apparently also in a documentary talking about the war on drugs called Public Enemy Number 1. It's from 2019, and apparently you can find it on various streaming sites that show a lot of hip hop type content.
He's also he's in a documentary on Albert Pune coming out at some point.
Really?
He did tweet about that, yes.
Sweet.
So I'm looking forward to that coming out.
During the pandemic, he was able to do a movie that was kind of, it's so wild. There was a bunch of Chicago PD actors who were in this one movie called like Hands Up, talking about the whole, you know, BLM events and police being brought into question. And Ice did another similar kind of movie called Equal Standard, where he just plays a bystander who just and it's just one of those, it's kind of Rashomon-ish, where it just talks about how, you know, everyone sees the different side of the whole argument, whether it's from the police body camera versus various bystanders, you know.
Yeah.
And it was wild though, because due to the pandemic, it's like it was set for a bunch of festival releases, so they decided to release it to the internet first on various sites like Vudu, and it got some decent reviews, and then they were able to submit it to a bunch of different festivals finally. So I've seen some good reviews for it so far, and I like the clips that I saw of it. So I'm like, okay, I will definitely check this out, because Ice never really got to the point where much halfway through Danny Trejo's career where is like he shows up, but it's just for a minute, even though he's on the cover. So you think he's a big part of it. So I'm just so glad that there wasn't too much of the whole, bait and switch where you're like,
I agree.
bastard.
I agree on that.
Van Damme's not in this movie, but he looks like he's the star.
That's how it is with Snoop Dogg and Wrecking Crew. He's only in like the first, I think 30 seconds.
Yeah, so that's basically it. If I'm gonna say anything bad about those movies, besides they're so bad they're good quality, is like Snoop fans totally got screwed. You're not gonna hear any of his music, and he doesn't.
No.
He's barely in it. I bet he barely remembers those movies. Fortunately, Snoop did get to appear on an SVU episode, so he can at least say he was in one.
There you go.
Program with Ice. But yeah, no, I have no deal about him. I don't. I just find it so much fun how he can kind of just make fun of himself, and then just kind of he can still put on a cool rap show various times. A lot of his filmed concerts are a lot of fun to see because he does do a lot of just in person, just talking about how they remix everything and get the various rap crews together. And those were in the mid 2000s. So it's like often touring with his wife, Coco, and everything. And it just seemed like he's kind of everyone's kind of cousin or uncle in a way, just in the music scene. Kind of, he just shows up and he's just very just moody and yet ready to party.
Something like that. Uncle Ice, yeah.
Because we can't. He might not get along with everybody, but I can't think of him being the guy who kills the mood in the party. If anything, he might raise the bar a bit, but and he'll surprise a lot of people, even those who aren't prepared for what's going to come out of his mouth. I think that's just it. This is the unpredictability. The filmmakers have utilized that to his acting credit, and but yeah, any other closing thoughts?
As far as that FilmWorks trilogy, if you see this outside of your local used books and goods store in a free bin, pick it up. It's worth absolutely watching the whole thing. Watch the commentary. This is something to remember. I've loved this movie. I love this series. This little like fan canon trilogy. Because they're not connected, but they kind of are. It's weird. It's weird. But they're great. They're damn good. That's all I have to say about them, dude. I'm happy to have a chance to come talk about them finally. I've been wanting to do episode of Galaxy of Film for a long time on these movies, but I just haven't had a chance to. So thank you for having me come on here to talk about them finally, man. Anytime.
And it's just an interesting person to just even discuss, because he's just one of those who, going in and out of his various movies, you just see how basically he's along for the ride. He can just keep being like raise the bar of any kind of movie he's in, even if it's just so trashy. And it's wild how you mentioned Seventh Deadly Sin, because that's definitely the music that is played the most in these movies. And if anything, there's no escaping Ice. He's gonna melt.
That should be a bumper sticker, man.
I'm sure he's copyrighted it somewhere. Oh man,
that's great.
So what do you got coming up for Galaxy of Film?
Oh man, we've got a bunch of stuff coming for Galaxy of Film. I know you record these in advance, so I don't want to give out too many like date dropping things just for this to either be way too far out or way too past. But yeah, we've got some good stuff coming. We just wrapped up the New York series on our YouTube channel, Galaxy of Film Productions.
Nice.
We got some stuff for Star Wars Celebration going on there in our podcast this summer. Entering pre-production for a couple short films we're working on. So we're hoping to get a few released this summer. Summertime is usually going to be a big grind time for us, mainly.
Yes.
So that YouTube's going to be growing. That's Galaxy of Film Productions. And check out the podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, the whole 9 yards. We're there at Galaxy of Film.
Sweetness. All right. Well, very badass.
We'll return after these messages.
JURS Podcast is proud to promote AutoCorrect, an independent film company with experienced industry professionals who can serve all your film industry needs. They include self-tapes, voice actor recordings, demo reel editing, script revisions, headshots, and much more. They're Actor Correct at your request. Book them on Instagram.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
Little
popping up.
history doll popping up
Absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
did
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey. And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
Greetings, friends. My name is Dean Legiro, and I'm the host of the 3324 podcast. I invite you to join me and my lifelong friend Eric Kuber to come with us as we discuss the music and movies that shaped our life. Each week, we'll pick an album or film that we really connect to, and not only give you some great info and trivia, but also discuss, debate, and celebrate what it means to us and the journey it took us on. We also look forward to hearing from you and giving us some of your picks for us to check out and discuss. I think it'll be a really fun experience, so come along with us for the ride. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider and at 3324.buzzsprout.com. Thanks for your time, and welcome to the 3324 family.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah.
Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-last plot holes or gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy.
At eilfm.podbean.com.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up